the next question, Dave, where do orcs come from and what's their origin?
I mean, I don't know if we're going. Well, I remember watching. No, I think I was listening to Corey Olsen, the Tolkien professor, talking about this recently. It might have been in the Friendship Onion podcast or something. And I think from what I remember, he said there isn't really an answer, or Tolkien himself didn't have an established answer, but then his son Christopher went on to choose one side, which is that they were just corrupted beings, or Melkor had like twisted and changed, manipulated elves, and then crossbred them as well to make them orcs.
Yep.
So, but is that right, or is that what you?
Yeah.
Well,
no. Yeah, you are right that like I'll get into the different possibilities and the different things that Tolkien had kind of mused upon over the years.
I think one of the things he was talking about was the fact that there might have been a question posed: do orcs have souls?
Classic.
Yeah, and he was basically like, we don't know the answer to this, because if we're going with what Tolkien's son had talked about, then technically there is a trapped elven soul in that orc, and will that orc be able to go to Valinor if it dies? And
exactly, yeah, it gets
not
pretty,
really,
yeah, gets pretty philosophical.
It gets a bit messy there. Yeah. So
yeah, no, but that is true. But and when you say that it was his son that kind of came up with it, it's not that. That's not the case. It's that Christopher Tolkien,
he kind of voted for that side.
Well, Christopher Tolkien is the one that he published the Silmarillion. We know that like the Silmarillion didn't get published in J.R.R. Tolkien's lifetime. So that was, made by Christopher Tolkien going through all of his notes, his father's notes, and kind of going through it. Now, that was probably the most developed idea that Tolkien had. And that's what Tolkien considered himself for the longest time. It was kind of later on in his life, he sort of started to, ponder different possibilities and different origin stories. But I'll explain that now in a moment. But basically, also another thing that's cool is if we go way back in time, so like before the First Age, back like to the Year of the Trees, it was called. It was when the first elves awoke on Middle Earth. And there was a Vala called Orome. He was the hunter. And he kind of just stumbled upon them one time. He used to just kind of like roam around Middle Earth on his like giant steed, on his, I think of like The Witcher going around on a Roach.
Oh, Rust or Roach, yeah.
Roach, just like wandering around. That's like Orome. And he kind of like stumbled upon these elves, and they were like the long-awaited and long-anticipated children of Iluvatar. Iluvatar was the god. He'd been like speaking about this for ages. I'm one of these days now, I'm going to make these children of Iluvatar. They're going to be class. And so they were like, well anticipated. And so it was a big deal that he was like, oh my God, they're here. And, but like at this stage, like, for Avala, it was like, oh my God, you're here all of a sudden. They're like, we've been here for like thousands of years. But he was like, oh yeah, whatever. So like he didn't find them all in just like one big group or anything. Like they already had scattered all across the land. So he was kind of, then he was like, oh, I'm going to go around and see if I can find more of them and, teach them things and like, help them out, because he kind of started to love these elves. And, he's just like, elves, I'm a big fan of you lads. And, but of course, like Morgoth, who was, Sauron's boss, the big bad in the First Age, he obviously hated Orome, no surprise there. So he started to want to, I know, yeah, he's just,
the worst.
He's just the worst. He's such, I don't know.
A Grinch.
Yeah. So he started to like trick the elves into being afraid of Orome. So he sent out these kind of like evil spirits and shadows on horseback to kidnap elves, never to be seen again. And then the elves kind of presumed that this figure, this dark, like mysterious figure or shadow on a horse, they thought it was Orome traveling around and like kidnapping elves. And like, they were like, we don't know what happens to them, but like, it's definitely not good. So then that was for the purpose so that if Orome did kind of come near some elves and they saw him, that then they'd be like, oh my God, that's him, let's hide. And let's not like, let's not approach him. So that's kind of what Morgoth did. Now, another possibility is that Morgoth didn't actually send any shadows or anybody out, but he just kind of started spreading these rumors of this was what was happening. But either way, some of the elves were actually ended up being afraid of this Vala, this guy called Orome. And so they kind of didn't go towards him. And then if they did that, it was probably more likely that Morgoth would actually catch them and ensnare them. And basically what was said to have happened then was that he took them back and he like he put them in prison and he tortured them and corrupted them and twisted them and like all this kind of dark magic and you know whatever weird techniques he was using, but he basically wanted to create this
Put loads of goo on them.
yeah exactly just like go down buy
all gross.
down to the shop to buy some jelly, and he was like, we'll smear this all over you, and then
it's like the Nickelodeon Kids Choice Awards, you know, when they do that big gunk thing and all the green goo just like comes or pours all over them. That's how
it was exactly like that. Yeah,
he was exactly like that.
He was putting pepper in their eyes. He was like, yeah, this is gonna make
no, make it
and then
stop.
they were like, ah, yeah. So he was just trying to create some new vile creature, which was the orc. And now something else just to note on that is that no one else in the world has the power to create life except for Eru Ilúvatar, which we've spoken about many times on this podcast. So we know that these orcs were created by taking some other life form and like torturing or mutilating it along with some, you know, dash of power or dark magic or whatever. So that was how
just
that...
a hint of disgusting. Oh my
yeah,
god.
oh no, too much.
no, too much disgustingness.
So Morgoth obviously couldn't create life, but he could make a mockery of that which Ilúvatar had made. And this twisting of Ilúvatar's children was considered Morgoth's greatest sin against Ilúvatar. And that's kind of a cool thing as well, that Ilúvatar had been like, planning this big, beautiful, you know, perfect race and perfect children of Ilúvatar to be like just happy and singing songs and whatever. And then Morgoth was like, I'm gonna mess them up. Yeah, pretty sly. But then we get on to the kind of change in canon where it's now all of this information is from the Silmarillion, so that's published canon. So we can take that and say, yeah, that's the situation. But there are some inconsistencies which we get in the movies. So obviously, well, as I said already, Tolkien changed his mind over the years, and he didn't really settle on a definite answer. So the most common perception is that they were originally elves, but he actually started out with an older idea, which was that Morgoth made them out of slime or sorcery, which is, there's a quote saying, bred from the heats and slimes of the earth, which is from the Book of Lost Tales. So yes, that actually means that Peter Jackson's idea of kind of pulling them out of these like sort of mud pods is not actually as crazy as what other people make it out to be. And that's actually similar to kind of one of Tolkien's first thoughts, like being made out of the slime and the heats of the earth. So that's...
It doesn't really show orcs coming out that way though in the movies, doesn't it?
No, but it
shows
Uruk-hai. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
you know, but I always imagined it, and I think what Peter Jackson is going for is that they shoved an orc in there and they shoved a man or shoved an orc and an elf, put them in the oven, turned it up to 200,
cooking
and
time,
then just like cook
20
it for a
years.
while, then out pops this like disgusting Uruk-hai. So
out of this cocoon.
like. Yeah, like I don't remember in the movies does it ever say where orcs come from, but this is where they talk about Uruk-hai being like twisted and manipulated.
But isn't that what
they were once elves and they were once men?
That's what Sauron says though when he's there chatting to Lurtz in the movie.
Do you know how the orc first came to be?
And then he's like,
how
they were like, you know, they were once elves, you know, and twisted and mutilated, whatever. And then he says, and now perfected my fighting Uruk-hai. Yeah.
Touche.
There you
Touchy.
go. So, that's a kind of cool thing, that just kind of making them out of slime and mud. Maybe that's where Peter Jackson got the idea to do that kind of, you know, little slime and mud cocoon sort of a thing. But anyway, also as Tolkien got older, he increasingly disliked the idea of orcs breeding with his precious elves. So he considered that they may, in fact, have been men originally who were taken and mutilated, and that's what they were. That was their origins, not elves. Or another one was that maybe they started out as some sort of wilder beasts, like monkeys, for example, who were then bred to have sort of orcish qualities. And there are also some notes from Tolkien saying that they could have that there could have been high beings like fallen Maiar spirits who took the shapes of orc in the early ages as well. And they would have been some, you know, strong, powerful orcs. So that would have been kind of cool.
Fallen angels.
But then none of these other ideas were ever actually updated or, you know, so then we should remember that the most canonically correct answer is that they were probably originally elves who were mutilated. So there you go. Yeah.
And like when you look at the stylization in the movies as well, they all have pointed ears. So I think that's kind of maybe a hint.
Maybe.
Towards where they came from. Maybe. Like, yeah, I suppose whenever you see those kind of ghouly ghouls in any other fantasy series, they probably have pointed ears as well. But yeah, Maybe
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
just a little Peter Jackson, like, this is where they come from.
This is what they are.
Come from pointy-eared elves.